The raw, guttural scream tore from Dr. Evelyn Carter's throat the moment she rounded the corner into her own backyard. It wasn't a scream of fear, but of pure, unadulterated agony and rage. Where her meticulously cultivated grove of young, experimental trees had stood just that morning, each one tagged, monitored, a crucial part of her life's work. There was now only a scene of brutal devastation. Chainsaw-wielding landscapers, clearly hired, were methodically felling the last of her precious specimens. Wood chips flew like angry confetti. The scent of fresh-cut sap and spilled herbicide hung heavy and sickening in the air. And there, amidst the carnage, stood Mr. Harold Jenkins, president of the Serene Oaks Homeowners Association, arms crossed, a smug, triumphant smirk plastered across his florid face. He looked like a conquering general surveying a battlefield. "What? What have you done?" Evelyn shrieked, her voice cracking, her eyes blazing as she stumbled towards him, nearly tripping over a freshly severed trunk. "These are not just trees. This is my research, my life's work." Harold actually chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound. "Your research, Dr. Carter? Or should I say, your unsightly collection of overgrown weeds and invasive species. This HOA has had numerous complaints. This mess was a blight on our community, an eyesore, a flagrant violation of Serene Oaks' aesthetic standards." He waved a hand dismissively at the felled trees. "We're doing you a favor, cleaning up this jungle you call a garden." "A favor?" Evelyn felt a wave of nausea. These trees were part of a critical NASA-affiliated study on advanced carbon sequestration. Each one represented years of genetic modification and environmental testing. You have destroyed millions of dollars of research, Mr. Jenkins. Possibly irreplaceable data that could help combat climate change. Harold rolled his eyes with theatrical impatience. "Oh, here we go with the melodrama. NASA, climate change. Spare me your excuses, madam. What they were was ugly, unkempt, and bringing down property values. This is a neighborhood of standards, and you, with your lazy gardening habits, were failing to meet them." As if on cue, he raised a megaphone that one of his cronies handed him. "Attention, Serene Oaks!" His amplified voice boomed across the manicured lawns. "Your HOA is taking decisive action today against the neglectful and irresponsible property owner on Willow Creek Lane. We will not tolerate overgrown weed patches and deliberate efforts to make our beautiful community look like a third-world swamp." A few neighbors had gathered at the edges of Evelyn's property, drawn by the commotion and the chainsaws. Some looked uncomfortable, but others, clearly Harold's allies, were smirking, nodding in agreement. "Her trees were awful, weren't they?" one woman whispered loudly to another. "Harold's absolutely right to cut them down. About time someone did something." Another man shouted, "Yeah, clean up that mess, Harold." It was attracting vermin. Several of them then, emboldened by Harold and the destruction, actually stepped onto the edge of her ravaged garden, deliberately trampling the disturbed soil where her seedlings had once thrived. "You call this laziness?" Evelyn's voice trembled with suppressed fury as she gestured to the devastation. "This was a dedicated 24/7 research operation. I have permits. I have documentation. You had no right. This is illegal destruction of property. This is an environmental crime." "The only crime here, Doctor Carter," Harold retorted, his smirk widening, "is your assault on our community's visual harmony. And for that, there will be consequences." He produced a pre-printed, official-looking document from his pocket and thrust it at her. "This is a formal notice of violation for maintaining a hazardous and unsightly landscape, for failing to comply with HOA directives, and for the costs incurred by this association in rectifying your problem. You are hereby fined $20,000, payable within 10 days. $20,000! For destroying her life's work, they were fining her $20,000. The sheer, unmitigated gall of it left Evelyn momentarily speechless. This wasn't just ignorance. This was calculated, malicious cruelty. This was a man drunk on his petty power, reveling in his ability to destroy something he clearly didn't understand, and worse, didn't want to understand. Harold, sensing her shock as weakness, pressed his advantage. He had one of his associates start filming with a smartphone. Let's get a good shot of the distraught homeowner amidst her beloved weeds for the HOA website, he cackled. A little public shaming might teach her a lesson about respecting community standards. The phone was shoved in Evelyn's face as she knelt, heartbroken, beside the stump of what had been her most promising specimen, a tree genetically engineered to absorb atmospheric pollutants at an unprecedented rate. The comments on the video, which Harold gleefully posted within the hour under the title, Serene Oaks HOA Cleans Up Neighborhood Eyesore, Defiant Homeowner Objects, Cries, were swift and brutal, fueled by the anonymous courage of the internet and the racist undertones Harold had subtly encouraged. Serves her right. If you can't maintain your property, get out. What kind of scientist lives in a weed patch? She's probably just lazy and making excuses. Those weren't trees. They were a fire hazard. Evelyn Carter, a pioneering NASA-affiliated research scientist, a woman who had dedicated her life to finding solutions for a planet in crisis, stood amidst the wreckage of her vital, irreplaceable research, publicly slandered, falsely accused, and facing a crippling fine for the crime committed against her. The injustice was a raw, gaping wound. But as she looked at Harold Jenkins's smug, triumphant face, a new, cold resolve began to crystallize amidst her grief and rage. He thought he had won. He thought he had silenced her, destroyed her work, put her in her place. He had no idea who Dr. Evelyn Carter truly was. He had no idea of the scientific and legal storm that was about to break over his arrogant, ignorant head. He had just cut down a grove of trees. He was about to find out he'd awakened a force of nature. The destruction of Dr. Evelyn Carter's research grove was not an end, but a declaration of war. While Harold Jenkins basked in the glow of his perceived victory, believing he had crushed the lazy homeowner and her weed patch, Evelyn was operating with the cold, methodical precision of a scientist facing a catastrophic data loss and a criminal offense. The $20,000 fine notice lay on her desk, a monument to ignorance, but her immediate focus was on salvage and evidence. She spent days in her ravaged backyard, often from dawn till dusk, dressed in full hazardous materials coveralls, complete with respirator and protective goggles, a necessity given the unknown nature and concentration of the herbicide Harold's goons had unleashed. She meticulously took hundreds of soil samples at varying depths, cataloged and photographed every severed trunk and poisoned leaf, and collected samples of the remaining plant matter, carefully sealing them in sterile evidence bags. She even set up small, discreet air quality monitors around her property line. Her neighbors, particularly Harold's chief informant, Mrs. Gable, a woman whose curtains seemed to possess a life of their own, watched these activities with a mixture of fear and morbid fascination. "Harold!" Mrs. Gable would report, her voice trembling with excitement. "She's out there again in that moon suit, digging holes, burying things, I tell you. And she's got strange machines making whirring noises. She's definitely covering up evidence of whatever illegal things those weeds were hiding, or maybe she's planting new biohazards." Harold, of course, lapped this up. "See," he announced at an emergency HOA community contamination alert meeting he convened on his front lawn. "The woman is clearly unhinged and dangerous. First the noxious weeds, now she's conducting bizarre experiments in her toxic wasteland. Those coveralls prove she knows she's dealing with dangerous substances, probably the remnants of her failed illegal bioengineering project. The $20,000 fine is just the start. We need to protect our children from this menace." Evelyn ignored the escalating slander. She was in constant encrypted communication with her superiors at NASA's Earth Sciences Division and with a specialized environmental forensics lab affiliated with the agency. The initial remote analysis of the photos and data she'd sent was alarming. Evelyn, her section chief, Dr. Eris Thorne, had said via a secure video link, his face grim, "The defoliant signature isn't matching any standard commercial herbicides. It's aggressive, and the damage pattern to your specimens is catastrophic. These weren't just trees, Evelyn. They were a national asset, a critical node in the global carbon capture research network. The loss is incalculable, well beyond the initial $15 million project budget. I know, Eris, Evelyn had replied, her voice tight with controlled emotion. But what I need now is irrefutable proof of what they used and who authorized it. The local HOA president, a man named Harold Jenkins, is orchestrating this. Consider it done, Eris had said. We're dispatching a specialized hazmat-rated courier to retrieve your physical samples for full-spectrum analysis at Langley. And our legal department is very interested. Destroying federally linked research property, especially using unknown chemical agents in a residential area, triggers a lot of red flags. The arrival of the official NASA-contracted hazmat courier in a van with government plates and driven by personnel in serious-looking protective gear who handled Evelyn's sample cases with extreme care sent Mrs. Gable and Harold into paroxysms of vindicated paranoia. "It's the feds, Harold," Gable shrieked into the phone. "They're raiding her, taking away barrels of toxic sludge. You were right all along. She's a criminal scientist." Harold, puffed up with self-importance, actually tried to approach the NASA team, demanding to know the nature of the hazardous materials being removed from this community. The lead courier, a no-nonsense woman with eyes that could freeze fire, simply looked at his HOA badge, then at him and said, "Sir, this is official United States government business concerning a high-priority research asset. Please step away from the vehicle." Harold uncharacteristically found himself stepping back. The HOA's legal threats, however, continued unabated, now amplified by Harold's proof of Evelyn's dangerousness. Daily notices of escalating fines for failure to remediate hazardous private property, improper disposal of biological materials, referring to her collecting samples of her own dead trees, and creation of a persistent public nuisance arrived in Evelyn's mailbox. The total demanded had now climbed past $30,000. They threatened to place an immediate lien on her property and to hire their own environmental cleanup crew, likely the same goons who destroyed the trees, to sterilize her yard at her expense if the fines weren't paid. Evelyn, meanwhile, was also receiving communications of a different nature. Secure data packets from Langley, preliminary reports from the EPA, alerted by NASA, and hushed urgent calls from colleagues at international climate research institutes who had heard whispers of the catastrophic loss of her unique carbon-absorbing tree lines. She was often seen on her porch, on her ruggedized NASA-issued laptop, reviewing complex data streams, satellite images of local atmospheric conditions before and after the herbicide deployment, or participating in secure video conferences with faces that, to anyone in the global scientific community, would be instantly recognizable as Nobel laureates and heads of major research councils. To Harold and Mrs. Gable, however, this was just more evidence of her villainy. "She's on that weird computer all the time, probably hacking into government systems," Gable would report. "And she's talking to those foreign-sounding people again. It's a conspiracy, Harold, a big one." Harold, feeling the pressure to resolve the Evelyn Carter problem before his, entirely fictitious, federal investigation implicated him, decided on a final decisive move. He announced a public HOA, final adjudication and sanctioning hearing to be held at the Serene Oaks Clubhouse. The agenda, to formally vote on placing an immediate lien on Dr. Carter's property for the now $35,000 in fines and fees, to authorize the HOA to forcibly remediate and re-landscape her yard at her expense, which he estimated would be another $15,000, and to seek a court order for her eviction if she failed to comply. He had flyers printed inviting all residents to witness justice in action and the final cleansing of the Willow Creek Lane blight. Evelyn received the summons for this kangaroo court. She read it, a slow, cold smile touching her lips. The independent lab results from her samples had just arrived via secure channels from Langley. The primary defoliant was indeed a highly toxic, federally restricted organophosphate compound, far too potent and dangerous for residential use, and illegal to deploy without extensive licensing and environmental impact assessments. The secondary compounds suggested an unregistered, black market chemical cocktail. The chain of custody for the herbicide purchase had been traced by NASA investigators back to a shell company with surprisingly direct links to a landscaping firm owned by Harold Jenkins' nephew. The night before the hearing, Evelyn was calm. She carefully packed a briefcase, copies of the lab reports, her NASA credentials, a portable hard drive containing all her meticulously gathered evidence, videos, photos, audio recordings of Harold's loudspeaker rants, copies of every threatening letter and slanderous online post, and a small, very high-resolution NASA JPL-developed portable camera projector unit capable of displaying crystal-clear video and data. Harold Jenkins, meanwhile, was practically giddy. He had his speech prepared. He had his evidence, Mrs. Gable's blurry photos and wild-eyed testimonies. He had his cheering section primed. He was about to publicly crush the crazy tree lady and cement his absolute authority over Serene Oaks. He had no idea he was about to walk into a scientific, legal, and public relations firestorm that would incinerate his petty kingdom. As the sun rose on the day of the HOA hearing, Harold was already out in his golf cart, making one last triumphant loudspeaker announcement. Today is the day, Serene Oaks, the day we reclaim our neighborhood, the day justice is served on the Willow Creek Lane polluter. Be at the clubhouse, 2 p.m. sharp, for the final verdict. Evelyn heard him. She was in her ravaged backyard, taking one last set of atmospheric readings. She looked at the dead stumps of her trees, her heart aching, but her resolve was like granite. This wasn't just about her research anymore. This was about environmental protection, about the abuse of power, and about the dangerous arrogance of ignorance. Harold Jenkins thought he was about to deliver a verdict. Dr. Evelyn Carter knew she was about to deliver a reckoning, and she had NASA, the EPA, and a mountain of irrefutable scientific evidence on her side. Harold Jenkins, radiating smug authority, gestured for his crew to advance on what remained of Dr. Evelyn Carter's research garden. "All right, boys," he bellowed for the benefit of the gawking neighbors and Evelyn, who had just stepped onto her porch. "Let's clear out this last bit of hazardous junk. Rake it, shovel it, level it. Not one twig of her precious research left. Show her how Serene Oaks deals with blight." The bulldozer operator revved his engine menacingly. Mrs. Gable stood ready with her phone, eager to capture Evelyn's final meltdown. But Evelyn Carter was not melting down. She stood, calm and resolute, the NASA-branded camera held steadily, its lens and unblinking eye pointed directly at Harold. "Stop your men, Mr. Jenkins," she said, her voice clear and carrying an unexpected force. "Every action you take from this moment forward is being recorded as evidence for federal authorities." Harold threw back his head and laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Federal authorities? For cleaning up some weeds? Who do you think you're fooling with that toy camera, Carter? Think a home movie is going to scare me?" He waved dismissively. "Proceed, men. Ignore her hysterics." "Actually, Mr. Jenkins," Evelyn's voice cut through his bluster like a scalpel, "this isn't just any camera, and this isn't just about weeds." She took a step forward, her eyes like chips of ice. "My name is Dr. Evelyn Carter. I am a senior research scientist at the NASA Langley Research Center, specializing in atmospheric sciences and advanced carbon sequestration technologies." She then raised a sleek, ruggedized tablet, its screen impervious to the glare, and tapped it. A short, professionally produced NASA video began to play, loud enough for everyone to hear. It showed animated graphics of global carbon cycles, then footage of Evelyn herself in a NASA lab, surrounded by complex equipment, explaining her research into genetically engineered trees capable of absorbing atmospheric CO2 at unprecedented rates. The video highlighted the critical importance of her field specimens, the very trees Harold had ordered destroyed. The final frame was a dedication, NASA Project Helios, Securing Our Planet's Future, with Evelyn Carter listed as principal investigator. The bulldozer engine died with a cough. The landscaping crew froze, their tools halfway to the ground. The onlooking neighbors gasped, a wave of shocked murmurs rippling through them. "NASA? She works for NASA?" someone whispered, horrified. Harold Jenkins' smug smirk had vanished, replaced by a look of stunned, slack-jawed disbelief. His face turned a ghastly shade of pale. The unsightly collection of overgrown weeds you so arrogantly and illegally destroyed, Mr. Jenkins, Evelyn continued, her voice ringing with cold, hard authority, was a $15 million federally funded research project. Those trees were unique, genetically engineered specimens, the culmination of nearly a decade of work by a dedicated team of scientists. Their destruction represents an incalculable loss to global climate change research and a direct assault on a vital national scientific asset. Harold was trembling now, his eyes darting around like a trapped animal. I, I didn't know. Nobody told me. They were just ugly trees, he stammered, his voice barely a squeak. Ignorance is not a defense, Mr. Jenkins, Evelyn stated, especially when that ignorance leads to criminal acts. Furthermore, the herbicide your crew used to poison my research grove has been analyzed by NASA's own Environmental Forensics Unit and cross-verified by the Environmental Protection Agency. It was a highly toxic, federally restricted chemical cocktail containing compounds illegal for residential use due to their extreme environmental persistence and danger to human and animal health. Its deployment in this neighborhood, without permits, without safety protocols, constitutes a serious environmental crime. As if summoned by her words, two dark sedans with official government plates pulled up silently at the curb, blocking Harold's golf cart. Several individuals in jackets identifying them as EPA Criminal Investigation Division and FBI Environmental Crimes Unit emerged, their expressions grim and professional. "Mr. Harold Jenkins?" the lead EPA investigator said, stepping forward, his gaze unwavering. "We have a federal warrant for your arrest. You are being charged with multiple counts, including the illegal use and disposal of banned hazardous substances, the willful destruction of federally associated research property, conspiracy to violate the Clean Water Act, and endangering public health." Harold let out a choked sob and sagged against his bulldozer, his legs seemingly unable to support him. "No, it was just an HOA matter, community standards," he babbled as an FBI agent calmly, efficiently handcuffed him. Mrs. Gable dropped her phone, her face a mask of terror. The other HOA cronies looked like they wanted the earth to swallow them. "This was never just an HOA matter, Mr. Jenkins," Evelyn said, lowering her NASA camera but keeping it focused. "This was an attack on science, an act of environmental vandalism, and a profound abuse of your petty authority. You tried to silence research vital to our planet's future because you didn't like the look of some trees." She turned to the stunned neighbors. "Let this be a lesson. Justice is indeed greener and far more powerful than any ignorance or prejudice." The crowd was silent. Then a few residents began to applaud, the sound quickly growing as the reality of Harold's downfall and Evelyn's true stature sank in. The legal repercussions for Harold Jenkins and the Serene Oaks HOA were devastating. Harold was convicted on multiple federal environmental charges and received a lengthy prison sentence, along with crippling personal fines. The HOA was found liable in a civil suit brought by NASA and Dr. Carter for the full $15 million value of the destroyed research, plus $6 million in punitive damages in environmental remediation costs. The organization was bankrupted and summarily dissolved by court order, its name becoming a byword for ignorant, abusive overreach. The videos Harold had posted to shame Evelyn were now Exhibit A in his prosecution, viewed 50 million times globally as a cautionary tale. Dr. Evelyn Carter, with the awarded damages and substantial new grants from NASA and international environmental foundations, established the Carter Institute for Climate Innovation. It was a state-of-the-art research facility and public education center, complete with a vast, secure arboretum dedicated to regenerating her lost research and developing new solutions for planetary health. Admission and educational programs were free to students from all backgrounds. And pointedly, any individual with a past conviction for environmental crimes or a documented history of opposing legitimate scientific research was explicitly barred from any association with the Institute. Evelyn also went on to receive a prestigious International Environmental Award for her resilience and her continued groundbreaking work. The final scene, years later. Harold Jenkins, gaunt and weathered, is part of a prison work crew in a harsh, sun-baked desert landscape. Under the watchful eye of a stern supervisor, he is miserably, laboriously planting tiny, drought-resistant saplings in the arid soil as part of a mandatory ecological restoration program. He wipes sweat from his brow with a grimy hand. In the distance, on a small solar-powered TV in the crew's break tent, a news report is playing. Dr. Evelyn Carter, looking serene and distinguished, is speaking at the dedication of a new global youth climate summit hosted by her institute. Our planet is a precious, finite resource, Dr. Carter is saying, her voice filled with quiet passion. Its future depends on our wisdom, our courage, and our unwavering commitment to seek and apply knowledge. We cannot allow ignorance or short-sighted greed to dictate its fate. Every tree we plant, every discovery we make, every mind we enlighten is a step towards healing. Never ever cut down the future. The camera pans from Harold's despairing face, a face that now understands the true meaning of barrenness, to the lush, vibrant grounds of the Carter Institute. A gleaming solar-powered sign above the entrance reads, "The Carter Institute, Green Justice." The imagined audience would be on its feet, a thunderous ovation for science, for resilience, and for a justice that was, indeed, profoundly green. NASA just served up some cosmic karma. Harold's new job, chief tree hugger, by force. Dr. Carter saved the world, one HOA takedown at a time,